Have you ever wondered about different structures for your nonprofit? Do you run a 501c3 and you've considered adding members, but you've been concerned about different regulations or reporting requirements from your government? Well, my name's Mitch, and in this channel, we talk about all things membership. So I'd love for you to subscribe. But more importantly, I'd love for you to dive into this video as we demystify memberships and how those fit with your 501c3. First, let's start with the basics. What in the world is a 501c3? A 501c3 is an organization that's a nonprofit that's received a specific designation from the US government's Internal Revenue Code. It enjoys unique tax benefits and status. But here's the most important. It's all about making the world a better place. These organizations can be charities, religious groups, scientific bodies, and academic institutions. To put it simply, 501c3 organizations are exempt from paying federal income tax, and donations to these organizations can be tax deductible. Let's dive more into this. So next, let's talk about their tax exempt status. This is probably what you're most familiar with when it comes to 501c3 organizations. 501c3 organizations get a really sweet deal. They're completely exempt from federal income taxes. That means every single dollar they raise can go directly to serving their mission. They kind of get a free pass when it comes to taxes, and who wouldn't want that? That's why getting a 501c3 status and the tax exemption that comes with it is highly coveted, but there's a lot of requirements. We'll dig into those later. Let's briefly talk about the types of 501c3 organizations. 501c3 organizations can take many shapes. They can be traditional charities, they can be a religious institution or an academic one. And the beneficiary of these organizations can range just as wide. The beneficiary can be cancer research, housing the homeless, or even the environment. The only unifying thing is that they have to exist for the greater good. They truly have to try to make the world a better place. All right, now the question that we've all been waiting for. Can a 501c3 organization have members? I'll make it really simple for you. Yes, absolutely. We serve hundreds of organizations that have the 501c3 distinction and use our software to manage their members. However, there are specific requirements that you have to follow to have members of your 501c3 organization. Now, don't be intimidated. Don't be scared. We're going to break this down one by one. First, let's give an explanation of membership. Now, unlike shareholders of corporation, members don't actually own the entity. They don't actually own the organization. However, similar to shareholders of a corporation, members can vote on important things, like they can vote on board members or mergers or the acquisition of your nonprofit. There's a lot of important decisions that would granted to the members to decide on. Now, since I invoked the distinction between shareholders of corporation and members of an organization previously, let's dive a little bit more into that. So when it comes to corporate governance, corporate directors have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to return profit. This drives a lot of the decision and the relationship between the shareholders and the directors of the corporation. Now, as we talked about before with nonprofits and organizations, but specifically with 501c3s, they have a mission. They have a stated mission that they're looking to accomplish or change in the world. And this is all required to get that tax exempt status from the IRS. So the way that a member will judge the directors or the officers of an organization is by an impact statement or by a summary of the work or the outcomes that the organization has achieved. So that's the difference between a shareholder of a corporation who's essentially on their behalf, they're trying to maximize value or maximize shareholder value versus the member of a 501c3 who is essentially not concerned about profits. Of course, they're driven by the stated impact in the mission statement of that organization. Now, we touched a bit on governance structure. We talked about how members of a 501c3 organization might vote to do really important things. They might vote to amend the constitution of the organization, or they might vote to do resolutions which represent the voice of the members as a collective. Another really important thing is that members will vote on the board of directors. In a common governance structure, the board of directors is who's overseeing the more tactical parts of the organization that come up more frequently than once a year at the annual meeting, for example. So the board of directors is then approved and elected by the members so that they can do things like hire the executives, fire the executives in some case, but overall just make sure that the organization is meeting its stated purpose. Again, a lot comes back to these organizations all having their mission statement because they're trying to achieve their good in the world. And so the board of directors is the one who's elected by the members to then execute on that mission. Now, these member voting rights are taken very seriously. There's not a much bigger responsibility than electing the board of directors. Again, the board is responsible for making sure that the organization is on track to meet its stated purpose. However, this isn't the only responsibility that members have from a voting perspective. Commonly, it'll be laid out in the Constitution or the Charter to determine what has to go to the member body to be approved, and then what can be done by the board of directors or by simply an executive. A common example would be whether the organization wants to merge with another organization, or whether they want to dissolve, or anything that really affects the governing structure of the organization will commonly have to go to the entire membership. Another important point to remember, and hopefully this will help set the context to really demystify this. When you hear 501c3, that is a tax designation from the US government's tax authority, the IRS. And this tax authority, the IRS, exists on the federal level. So it's important to say that on a more local level, like with your individual state, there might be additional requirements when serving your members as a part of the nonprofit. So just make a star and make sure you do a little research on your state government and if they have any additional regulations to serve members as a part of your nonprofit. Now, we also serve about 50% of our customers are from Australia and Canada and the UK, and those have separate tax authorities, of course, who have separate designations for tax exemption and separate requirements, unfortunately. However, a lot of the requirements are similar, so this is a good starting point to learn what member organizations will provide to their members, but definitely make sure to check with your local tax authority. Next, we're going to go over my favorite part, which is the annual general meeting, or commonly called the AGM. These are meetings that typically happen every year, hence the annual, and they're held to go over the most relevant business. This is often when you'll do the board director elections, you'll approve the annual budgets, and you'll get relevant updates. It can be anything from a quick procedural meeting to something where you get all of your stakeholders in the same room, make sure they're in tune with the mission statement and the impact the organization is doing. So there's a wide range of ways that organizations will actually execute their AGM, but there are often some minimum requirements depending on your state and the governance. So this is an important thing not to glance over, but I also think it tends to be the most fun. Now that we've defined membership and we're all aware that as a 501c3 you can have members, let's talk about once you've received that tax exempt status, how to keep it. Now, before we talked about being tax exempt, this is really such an important privilege that the government grants to organizations, and it's when organizations are qualified, they have a greater mission, but it also comes with a very high responsibility. There's things you need to do to keep that really coveted tax exempt status. Let's talk about those really quick. First up, and my favorite topic as a small business owner, is record keeping. You need to document and record keep every dollar that comes into the organization and every dollar that's then spent. This isn't something that you want to leave off until you have an audit or until you have to file your taxes. You need to start doing this on day one before it's needed. The better record keeping you have, the safer that coveted tax exempt status is. So take it from me, keep good records and make it a priority. Next, when it comes to keeping that coveted tax exempt status, you need to make sure you're running regular board meetings. We talked about before how members elect a board of directors to act in their interest or act on the interest of the collective body to make sure the organization's executing on its mission. Those elections are all for naught unless you're holding regular board meetings that are well executed. There's a lot of other material out there on how to run a well-executed board meeting. but it's your job as the executive or the founder of the 501c3 organization to make sure these board meetings happen on a frequent and consistent basis and that they're well run. And third is annual reporting. This builds off of the other components. You won't be able to put together an accurate and informative annual report without good record keeping, good bookkeeping, and really good diligence around your financials. So when you put together your annual report, this will be used to inform your members and other stakeholders, like potentially people that have donated to the organization. However, there's a more structured and formalized component to annual reporting, and that's Form 990, which is an IRS tax form that every 501c3 organization is required to fill out. Annual reporting is the third component of making sure you're in line and you keep that coveted tax exempt status. There we go. I hope that answered all of your questions about 501c3 organizations and members. If I missed anything and you still have an outstanding question, put it in the comments. My promise to you, I'll find you that information and reply to your comment directly. Now, as a reminder, my name is Mitch. I'm the founder of a company called Join It. In this video series, we don't just talk about Join It. We talk about all things membership. We release benchmark membership stats. We talk about how to build a membership website and make more money online. And then we talk about innovative technology, whether it's Join It or something else. I'd love for you to follow along by subscribing, but if you have any questions for me or about my company, feel free to always email support@joinit.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you soon.